Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the tent. We have a power woman today with us who has been around the ecosystem and startups and big companies for years, and I try to figure out like who's Cathy and what does Cathy do, but I would love to hear some of your stories. Anyway, Cathy Lego is with us today in the tent. Thank you so much for making time.
You're welcome.
I can't wait
Glad
to
to
hear
be
some of
here.
your stories. I'm sure there's plenty of them. Tell us briefly, who's Cathy? Tell us, your fun, the boards you're on, the things you've seen, and kind of and then we'll get to a story about some of the things that you've seen.
Sure. Gosh, I've now been in venture capital 30 years. I started with Coopers & Lybrand. I was an auditor, and one of my tiny clients was Oak Investment Partners, which had a $25 million fund in 1979, 1980, and 1981 they were going to raise a huge fund. It was a $60 million fund.
Wow.
And I joined them.
Okay.
And I joined them to be their director of finance and to learn the field of venture capital, which was very young at the time.
Of course.
But I had two very senior partners, Stu Greenfield and Ed Glassmeyer, who trained me.
Wow.
And we were a small group. We consensus decisions. We raised a $60 million fund, then 100, then 150, then 04. I was with them for 11 years. I focused on semiconductors and telecom,
Wow.
which was new.
So give us one example of a company that you guys invested in that now is kind of a common name, or that people...
SanDisk.
SanDisk. Okay, so
All right,
SanDisk.
so SanDisk, I've morphed with SanDisk from it was a startup with 3 people to 25 years ago, and it's now a $5 billion global company.
Okay, so just so people know, $5 billion.
$5 billion.
Yeah.
I was on the board till 2002. I then raised a photonics fund because I was on the board of Uniphase for a while and built that company up to $1 billion. And then I left, but they wanted me to come back, so I rejoined the board in 2004. So I've done angel investments in that period of the 90s and worked with a lot of young companies. I advise young companies. But I've also morphed myself. I believe companies need to be well run and governed. So I now chair the audit committee of SanDisk and another large company, Lam Research, which is now about $4 billion.
Wow.
Just acquired Novellus last year.
These things that you're talking about, like, it seems so like fairy tale-y, like $4 billion, $5 billion companies, and you're talking about watching a company grow from 3 to this size. I mean, that must be insane. I mean, again, that's a lifetime of me.
But you know what? It's not one company. The company morphs. The
Yeah.
company changes. SanDisk is unique in that it had the same founder at the company until 2 years ago. But
Wow.
the second founder is now currently running the company, which is extremely rare in Silicon Valley.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. So along the way, you have your own fund now. Is that or you
Well,
just,
right
you
now
do
I angel.
Yeah,
I
okay.
angel invest as Lego Ventures.
Yep.
I had a fund called the Photonics Fund in the 90s, which I had been on the board of Uniphase, so it was strategic money for them in the heat of optics.
So I want to talk about this, your experience and tying it to angel investing, because on another episode we talked about, some of the angels, it seems like, are almost doing this as a hobby, and they're kind of bored in a sense, or they just made money. But I think, if I was going to come pitch you, again, we talk about the concept of smart money in the Middle East. It's still money is money, but if I was going to come pitch you, I think it would be your experience and the things you can contribute as far as wealth and knowledge would almost be more valuable than a $50,000 or $100,000 check that you could write. But tell us, how the two are intertwined, and how does that make you a good angel, having seen...
Well, money isn't money.
Money is not money.
There's good money,
Yep.
there's smart money, and there's awful money.
Oh, yeah.
There are people who want to run your company, as well as people who want to guide your company, and people who want to write a check and be able to talk about interesting technology at a cocktail party.
Exactly.
When an entrepreneur is raising angel money, thank you.
You're welcome.
You really need to look at who What do they bring to the table? Do they bring a network of contacts? Have they built companies before? Can they put the infrastructure in? Are they good counsel? Can they help you hire people?
Yeah.
Smart money, where you really understand the industry, is different than that guiding mentor money, where you may not know the industry, but you can really educate a person on how to manage people.
What's the breakup between, being a mentor or being, specifically experienced? I mean, I'm saying the average angel investor has, a broad kind of spectrum of knowledge, right? But where's that line between a mentor, like you're saying, an angel, and someone who's specifically knowledgeable in that field or an expert in that field? Where does that break up?
It has a lot to do with personality. If I care about you as a person, I will be a better mentor for you because I can get in your head. I can understand, Nima, maybe you should approach this a little differently, and coach you and be there for you as you have issues. Every startup has issues.
I mean, I would love some. I would love to.
And there's a whole group of venture capitalists that haven't gone life cycles through companies. I mean, haven't seen them build and fall and restart. That it's come into the company, stir the pot, walk out. 5 weeks later, come in, stir the pot, and that's hard for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, of course.
What they want is someone who they can call comfortably.
Comfortably, yeah.
With lower risk profile. I've got an issue.
Yeah.
Not hope it doesn't get surfaced till it's a crisis.
Yeah, or then sweep it under the rug and make it sound pretty for the board meeting.
Well, yeah, I think board meetings could be run better in startup situations where it was more of a dialogue and less of a PowerPoint.
Yeah, because I noticed, I've been in a few board meetings, nothing big, but I noticed it seems like a lot of times it's kind of this, oh, things are going great, we've done this, and it's fluff in a sense, and again, it's not that things are horrible, but I think the whole idea, a lot of entrepreneurs are almost scared of their board, and so they make it seem a little bit better than things.
Because they don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
The board in a lot of venture startups is a source of capital, and you can only have the capital withdrawn from you or given to you. I mean, you panic that they'll walk away, and then if your venture capitalists don't believe in you, you don't get more money.
Or they fire you.
Or they fire you. It's important. I like small boards, and I like dialogue, and I like, this is what we're going to do between now and the next time we see you.
Yeah.
This is what's happening in the market. This is what's happening in the competitive scene. This is what's happening in development.
Yeah.
And you tell me the 5 things you're going to do, and when you meet with me next time, you say, this is where I've made progress, this is where I need help, and it should be no surprises.
Yeah.
A lot of VCs haven't gone through the cycle, except through the cycle of the 2000 bull rush.
Yeah.
And they think companies are created in 2 years. Well, they're not.
They're not.
If you look at companies, it usually takes 2 years to really get through the research and development, hone the product in the next year, start a market presence. And by the time you're cash flow positive and growth, you're 6-7 years out.
Yeah, of course.
And the software companies can pull it in a year.
Sure.
But reality is it takes time to build a company.
No, you're
so
right.
you need to find patient money as well. Patient money.
I think you just said, struck. I got goosebumps when you said that, because that's one of the issues in the Middle East. The investors there are very old school or brick and mortar, and they don't understand that you can't call next week and say, hey, how come you haven't sold, or how come you don't have revenue? So the mentality of investing in startups at this stage is light years away from building a tower or an airline or something that you can touch and feel. And so you have to be patient, and that's something that's really, really important. I tend to say that the money is kind of slow, it has strings attached, but this part, I've never actually said it, that it needs to be patient. So investors in the Middle East, please, if you believe in the entrepreneur, to write them the check, be patient, guide them and give them feedback, and really be part of the experience and contribute. So that's very important, because I think that's a big component of what the ecosystem is missing. This idea of really being involved.
I don't know if it's missing. I think it's relevant to have sources of capital that can continue to fund
Sure.
through cycles
Yeah.
or a misplan, but it's really important for entrepreneurs to be honest about where they really are.
Yeah.
And that is difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs because they're so optimistic about what can be done.
Mhm.
And it's difficult for them to create their own discount factor,
Yeah.
to say, calm down, I'm not going to get 14 sales in the next week. 2.
2. Under
And-
promise, over deliver.
Well, I just want people to temper and deliver.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's a good point. Cathy, we do this thing on the show called Lessons Through Stories. And the idea is that we have this board. I don't know if you took a look at this, but they're kind of funny topics, but they all have a really important point. So I'd love to hear you talk about an experience or a story based around one of these topics. Have you had a chance to pick one?
Where do you need a topic?
Okay, the 3 or 4 that have not been exactly.
Just give me one.
This is the 3 or 4 that have not been touched. What's 0.5% amongst friends? Pre-money valuation of 8 million. Are you nuts?
I'll talk to valuation.
Perfect valuation. So that's a really
Valuation is something that people have. It's magical.
Yes.
How is it? How do you come to that number? I will tell you that if you ask someone to overpay in the first round,
Mhm.
and you ever need a subsequent round of capital, they will get the average price they wanted at that point. Be fair,
Mhm.
have expectations on comparables,
Yeah.
and comparables change.
Of course.
When the market goes
Especially right now,
crazy,
yeah,
suddenly, big data companies right now are commanding great valuations.
Yeah.
App companies now have really low valuations
Yeah.
compared to what they were 2 years ago.
Mhm.
It's where the heat of the moment is. And just recognize that you really understand what's fair.
Sure.
The management team wants to have a stake by the time the company's at a point of liquidity,
Mhm.
either an IPO or a merger event. And management team should have 20 to 30% of the company by then because they built it.
Yeah.
Well, the money needs to adjust.
Sure. So then, these entrepreneurs now, I see them all the time. No product, no team, really just kind of getting started in an idea and maybe a vision, but they're coming in their seed round are saying $8-10 million. And it always baffles me. Like, I'm like, how does this make sense? And then what really baffles me is that you do see some of these crazy deals happening where all of a sudden someone's raising 10 on an $80 million valuation, and it's like really like a big A round, or not even a B anymore, So tell us, how does that make sense?
There is no science.
There's no science, okay.
And there is no sense.
Okay, that's good.
Okay,
that just solves it for me.
It's a market
Yeah.
where it's not as efficient as it is emotional.
Mm-hmm.
If it were efficient, you'd see every deal and every team and every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to look at how much capital you're going to raise over the life of the company to get to cash flow. That
Do
last
you think
capital.
people know that when they're getting started?
If you've built companies before
See, that's
in the
something.
industry,
Yeah.
you can have an idea. I also tell entrepreneurs that if you raise more than you think you would raise, hide some of it.
Yeah.
Don't even think you have 10 million. Think you have 5. Hide 5. Don't think you've got it
Where do you
because
hide
you'll
it?
spend you mentally
Yeah,
put it in a
does
drawer
not exist.
because you'll hire too many people.
Yep.
You'll overpromise. You'll overspend. You'll over raise people when you have to give them increases in salary. You'll be more generous,
Mhm.
and I want people to spend as little as they can
Run lean.
to get the product in somebody's hand that says,
Huh.
will you give me money now? And that's a funny stage
feeling, yeah.
because you don't know you have a product till you will give me cash for it.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, the funny part about it is that a lot of the companies now, a lot of them are not making revenue. Many are not cash flow positive, and they're still commanding, billion or $2 billion or $5 billion valuations. And that, especially in the Middle East, when I talk to them, raising money and valuations is a little bit still cut and dry there. It's what's your revenue, what's your customer base, what's your churn,
Yeah.
fundamentals,
What's your
right?
discounted cash flow?
Exactly. What are your
You
fundamentals?
really can't do that.
But you're right. Here it is a little bit emotional. It's a little about looking a little bit ahead. But I can tell you, like some of these deals, I just
You've never overpaid for a great deal, and that's all people talk about.
That's
is
all
great deals.
That's
I mean,
a good point.
for every 2 or 3 great deals, you've probably done 6 or 7. I mean, I have a litany of bad deals I've done. But it's just like baseball.
Yeah.
Nobody bats 1,000.
Nope.
But if you bat over 330, 340,
You're an all-star.
that's so good.
You're an all-star.
So in venture, it's the same way. What you want to do is keep your bad deals as the smallest amount possible. So you don't have these large sinkholes.
Yeah.
So you keep them small and put money on your good deals, even at the higher valuations, so that the multiple of the cash just deployed is good.
Yeah.
And be patient. I mean, you may need another round, so have dry powder.
Yeah.
Nothing is more aggressive than a venture capitalist sensing the other venture capitalist doesn't have capital. Because then the round winds up being who's got the cash commands the value.
Sure.
So it's a game.
I like that. That's actually a really good point. I love that. And so the power word of today is be patient for entrepreneurs and
Be
for
patient.
investors. And so we do this thing on the show called Old Rules. What's Cathy's number one rule? Like that in business and in what's helped you along the way. I almost think of it like as a roller coaster. Like what's
My
your
number one rule was taught to me by my senior partner.
Okay.
Do less better.
Do less better. Wow.
Do less better. I have now applied that to so many aspects of professional and personal life where you, bright, capable entrepreneurs can do everything. And they can do everything for everybody. And what I try to get them to focus on is do something really well for some group of people and excel.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point because I meet entrepreneurs in the Middle East a lot of times who have good ideas, but they're talking about 7 different revenue models and this and that. And I'm like, listen, if you actually manage to do one thing very well, you have a slight chance of being successful. But the second you come in and talk about 7 different revenue models and these acquisitions and partners and blah, blah, you've lost someone because there's no way. There's no way you can actually do the opposite of what you just
do
said.
too much too fast.
Yeah.
It is extremely hard to write a 3-page PowerPoint. Everyone starting a company should be able to write a 3-page PowerPoint. This is what I'm going to offer these people that solves this problem that costs them this much, that they can save this much by going with me.
Okay, everybody who listened to this right now, I want you to say this every night before you go to sleep because I get PowerPoint presentations that are 27. The last one was 42 slides. And I'm like, look, cut 90% of it. And the entrepreneur came back to me like, what do you mean? That's all the important stuff. I'm like, no. I'm like, cut 90% of it because nobody wants to look at 42 PowerPoint
If
slides.
you're going to start a company.
3 slides. That's the shortest I've ever heard in my life.
What's the pain out there?
Yep.
Who has the pain? How are you going to solve or lessen his pain? Who else is trying to solve that?
Yep.
That's the competitive slide.
Yeah.
And what can you charge him and how can you earn cash? I mean,
Kiss. Keep it simple to it.
No, it's not just simple. It's really focusing.
Yeah, focusing,
and
exactly.
Focusing is very hard.
Oh, I can tell you that. I have a little ADD and focusing is very hard. And being an entrepreneur, it's almost like it's the anti-focus because you think so big and you want to do so many things, but it is very, very hard to actually just like zoom it all in, do one thing well, be able to concisely tell people what you're doing, and really just execute on that one thing. So that's very, very important. And again, every entrepreneur that I meet, I tell them the same thing. Can you look at my deck? Sure. First thing I see is 20 slides. I swear, I've sent it back. If it's more than 20 slides, I won't even look at it. I'm like, I will not look at this until it's 12 or 15 at least, And people are offended a little bit sometimes, like, oh, well, it's important, we have to talk about this. I'm like, no, nobody wants to look at this. So from now on, if you can send me a deck with 3 slides, I promise I will look at it, and I promise to give you feedback. But no, really, those are some awesome pieces of advice. And we have something, a little something for you. It's a PITME t-shirt. We are bootstrapping this, so this is our way of getting human billboards. So Cathy, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Again, ladies and gentlemen, please take everything you heard today to heart and listen to this, because Cathy has been there. She's built and she's seen the growth, and she's invested. And so all the stuff that you talked about is profoundly important, and it's one of the things that we really try to do on the show here is to add a human element or an experience to a fundamental of what it takes to build a company. And so hopefully people will listen to this. Again, watch it twice if you can, and there will be a question about this on the test. So Cathy, I want to thank you so much for making time. Really appreciate it.
It's great.
Keep us updated on what you're up to, because I would love to find out, hear some more stories even on a personal level. And if you have any feedback for us or any thoughts of how we can make the show better, we would love that as well.
We'll have to watch them.
Yeah, we're launching in March, so they'll be available, and we've had some amazing stories told already. And I can tell you, some of the stories on the show are pieces that I have never heard at any conference, and it's not the typical fireside chats that people are doing. So anyway, want to thank you, want to thank ArabNet, our partner, and also our sponsor, PayPal. We'll see you next time. Peace.